Calls are growing louder in the United Kingdom for England and Scotland to boycott the 2026 FIFA World Cup that is set to be co-hosted by the United States in months from now.
The German politician Jürgen Hart, a member of the Christian Democratic Union, has raised the idea of a potential World Cup boycott in a German newspaper.
Boycotting the upcoming World Cup games in the U.S., the local World Cup committee has been expecting hundreds of thousands of visitors to travel to the Metro when the matches kick off in 5 months.
5 months out, the host cities in the U.S. are supposed to be counting down to packed fan zones, sold-out hotels, and a summer where football takes over every screen and every street. Local organizing teams have been planning for hundreds of thousands of visitors to pour into metros across the country when the first matches kick off. But instead of the usual build-up, another storyline is getting louder by the week. Calls across parts of Europe to stay away. In the United Kingdom, the idea of England and Scotland boycotting the 2026 FIFA World Cup has started circulating far beyond niche fan forums. It's being discussed as a serious political statement. And it's not just Britain. In Germany, CDU politician Jürgen Hart has openly floated the idea of reconsidering participation, speaking in a way that treats boycott talk like a real option rather than a fringe slogan. The tournament that was meant to be a showcase of football's reach spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico is now being pulled into arguments about borders, visas, foreign policy, and whether the world's biggest sporting event is being turned into a stage for something that has very little to do with sport. On paper, World Cup 2026 is historic for reasons football fans can actually celebrate. It expands to 48 teams. It stretches to 104 matches. It's the first time the tournament is hosted across 3 countries. The scale is enormous, and so are the stakes for federations, sponsors, broadcasters, and host cities. But the mood around it, especially in parts of Europe, is shifting from excitement to suspicion, and in some places to outright anger. One reason is how quickly the boycott conversation has moved from hot take to organized pressure. In the Netherlands, a petition calling for their national team to boycott has been reported as drawing massive public support, with the argument that players risk becoming unwilling symbols in someone else's political messaging. Even the fact that federations feel the need to respond carefully shows the temperature has changed. The KNVB, the Dutch Football Association, hasn't committed to anything dramatic, saying it will keep monitoring developments, but the message underneath that kind of statement is obvious. They know this isn't going away. Germany is seeing similar friction. While official bodies may be reluctant to jump into boycott commitments, voices around German football have been pushing the idea of serious consideration, not as a stunt, but as a question of reputation and principle. Polling that's been discussed in this context suggests a divided public, and what's striking is the why. The conversation isn't centered on stadiums, facilities, or even the usual concerns like ticket prices. It's about geopolitics and whether a tournament hosted in the U.S. could become entangled in bigger international disputes in a way that makes participation feel like taking sides. France, Belgium, and other European countries have sounded more cautious in public, often sticking to safe language about focusing on sporting preparation and not mixing politics with the game. But even there, politicians have been drawn in. In the UK, some MPs have argued that embarrassment is the point, that refusing to participate would send a message to the White House. In France, you've seen the idea raised of shifting the center of gravity of hosting to Canada and Mexico, which tells you how far this has drifted from normal football talk. When hosting arrangements are being debated as a political workaround, you're no longer in the world of sport as sport. You're in the world of sport as leverage. Then came something even more unusual. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter stepping into the conversation in a way that, even if it carries no official power, changes the vibe. When a former figurehead of FIFA backs calls for fans to avoid traveling, it signals that the unease is not just online noise. It's a sign that, to some people who've lived through FIFA controversies for decades, this moment feels different, sharper, more combustible. And a big part of that comes down to entry and treatment. The practical question of whether fans, staff, and delegations can travel freely and safely. The article you're working from points to growing concern around tighter immigration enforcement and visa scrutiny, especially for visitors from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. It mentions reports from the Club World Cup buildup where members of certain delegations allegedly had difficulty securing visas, and it highlights how incidents near stadiums during major tournaments can ripple through fan communities fast. Whether every claim holds up the same way under scrutiny or not, the reality is that perception matters here. If supporters believe they might be detained, denied entry, or treated unpredictably, they don't need a formal ban to decide not to go. Fear and uncertainty do that job on their own. If you're following this story because you care about where football is heading and how politics keeps creeping into the game, take a second to subscribe right here. This whole World Cup debate is moving quickly, and the details matter way more than the headlines. But immigration anxiety, on its own, doesn't fully explain the scale of anger that's being described. The larger fuel is geopolitical theater. The piece ties the backlash to rhetoric and actions attributed to Donald Trump and his administration. Threats involving Greenland, tariff talk aimed at European countries, comments about Canada's sovereignty, and warnings aimed at Mexico. It also describes a dramatic escalation in Venezuela, presented as a major U.S. military operation with leadership arrests and an international legal shockwave. Whether people accept those claims at face value or view them as political storytelling, the effect is similar. It frames the United States not simply as a host nation, but as the main character in a global controversy. And that makes the tournament feel less like a neutral event and more like a symbol. That symbolism is amplified by the way World Cup planning has been connected, publicly and visibly, to the White House. The article highlights the creation of a White House task force for the 2026 World Cup, chaired by the sitting president, with the vice president as vice chair, and a named executive director. In isolation, a host country forming a task force isn't unusual. Governments always get involved in logistics, security, and tourism. But here, critics argue the optics are different because the administration is already central to contentious global disputes, and the tournament becomes one more platform where image, power, and politics blend. Then there's the FIFA side of the optics. The article describes FIFA President Gianni Infantino appearing closely aligned with the administration to use it ways that feel unusually personal and public, high-profile appearances, symbolic gestures, FIFA establishing a visible footprint in Trump-branded real estate, and a controversial but peace award moment that reportedly surprised members inside FIFA itself. Again, whether you read every detail as straightforward fact or as a narrative shaped by the loudest critics, the pattern being painted is what matters. The perception that football's leadership is not merely cooperating with a host government, but actively participating in political theater. And once that perception sets in, every small moment gets interpreted as evidence. A trophy shown in the wrong place. A podium scene where someone doesn't step back. A medal pocketed. A photo op held too long. None of those things change the result of a match, but they change the story people tell about what the match means. And in a World Cup, meaning is half the product. The other half is the football. This is where the boycott debate starts to sound less like a moral grandstanding contest and more like a genuine dilemma, because history doesn't give an easy answer. Sports boycotts can send messages, but they can also punish athletes who have trained for a once-in-a-lifetime chance. The 1980 Moscow Olympics boycott is the classic example. It made a political point, but it also closed doors for a generation of competitors who never got that moment back. The 1978 World Cup in Argentina under dictatorship raised the same questions about legitimacy and silence. Later tournaments in Russia and Qatar went ahead despite intense criticism. FIFA has continued to award hosting rights amid controversy, including future tournaments that human rights groups have flagged heavily. So, supporters of Just Play argue that singling out the US now looks selective, like outrage chosen for convenience rather than principle.